James, good morning everyone and fellow ISM members. I'm going to rattle through this fairly quickly and what you're going to get is my observations having been in the space of interviewing people and being interviewed and just some of the stuff I've seen over the past few years. So we'll kick off, I'll get the slides to move along. So 20 minutes and then Q&A, as James said at the end. Please put the questions on there. My observations, talk about personal brand, the 5 Ps, the interview, some of the behaviours, a few tips, and then how you should be closing those interviews out. So ability to speak, I've been managing sales teams and interviewing people for over 25 years. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at it or necessarily enjoy the process, but it's a necessity obviously of sales leadership. And I'm heavily involved in a number of sales organisations, run some big sales LinkedIn groups, etc. So I get a lot of interaction with different people. So I've interviewed for and I've run inside sales teams, external teams. You, of course, recruit junior people and experience. You have to balance what you're asking and what you expect from people, and direct channel salespeople, hunters, farmers, all the different types and varieties. So there are nuances of different questions and different things you expect from someone more experienced or less experienced, and it's interesting what you actually see. So from the last 3 or 4 years, to give it recent context, what have I seen in interviewing a lot of people? They come unprepared and lack of research. I'm going to talk through these things as well. Don't demonstrate their sales skills in the interview itself, and that's one of my biggest frustrations. They don't differentiate themselves. If you're selling a product or service, you expect to understand unique selling points, your hot button statements, the things that are going to stand out and get the customer interested. And yet interviewees don't seem to do the same when selling themselves. Don't have facts at hand. And that's a fundamental, right? Some example sales they've made, or customer names or people. Because often there's going to be people that you're going to get asked about that the interviewer may know or be testing you on with specific knowledge. And if you've put it, particularly what really gets me, people have put stuff on their CV, you then ask a question about it. I closed this deal, and you ask them a few questions and it's obvious they didn't actually close that deal, they supported someone else, they were involved, they were part of a virtual team, etc., which is fine if you hadn't made the claim in the first place. Another big one of mine is what I see is interviewees are reactive and passive to the interviewer. What do I mean by that? They wait for the interviewer to ask a question, answer the question. They wait for the next question, answer the question. They let the interviewer just take you through a journey that the interviewer's planned out and then leave at the end on the hope of, well, that I've done better than the next guy or girl who's answered the same process and questions. And I've also seen them behave differently in an interview than when they're selling. Now, either they are behaving differently or what you're getting and your perception of them in that interview is actually them. So I've had people where I've at the end given them that feedback, or why haven't you done this, or this stood out for me. Oh no, I do that when I'm selling. Well, if you're going to say that, why haven't you just demonstrated it now? Because it's now a negative in my thoughts. So let me give you a few baseline facts, and there's hundreds of different stats out there, but I picked a few out just to give some context of things that I think people need to have at the forefront of their minds. You know, a lot when you put a job advert out, where they post on LinkedIn, etc., a lot of people will reply. And what I have noticed is a lot of people aren't posting their job applications on LinkedIn any longer because they get too many replies. And I've had that feedback from some recruitment and HR teams. But there will be a lot of replies. There will be only a short number go for the interview and only one that's going to get the role. And it's about differentiating yourself, getting yourself into that short list specific to that role. I'm not so sure the next stat, whether that's a bit high, but I do think it's a valid point to highlight. You know, people do discard based on things such as the email address. If you have a funny or inappropriate email address that you use for private, set up a different one. It takes 5 minutes to use for professional. Don't get hooked into, I'm just going to use that one because that is my email address. And the biggie that still shocks me that people don't take note of is social media. You can see some of the stats here. People will, I always do it, people will look at your social media. They will search your name on Google. They will see what they can find. They'll look on LinkedIn, see who else they know that you know. Because if I know someone that you know as a candidate, I may be able to take reference for that. Give you a prime example very quickly, a real example recently. I interviewed someone who worked at a company I used to work at many years ago. So during the interview, I think it was two-thirds of the way towards the end, I asked, what would X and Y at your old company say about you? Because I know them. And the face they gave me, they were shocked, didn't realize I knew these people, didn't realize I'd worked there, would have taken a few seconds. I said, well, look, and I could tell, so it took me one phone call afterwards to an old friend, and immediately I get a different impression and some different answers, and this person's just told me about deals that they ran and closed. So you are going to be checked out. I'll touch on that in a second. When I talk to friends and people who aren't in sales, and you talk about interviews, they're typically nervous. Oh, I hate interviews. Oh, I get really nervous, or I panic. In sales, this should be common nature to you. This is what you do for a profession. You go and meet people you haven't met before, and you sell them a product or service. You try and understand their needs, match what you have to those, differentiate yourself, pre-close, test close, close the sale, close to the next objective, move forward to the next meeting, tender, presentation, whatever it is. The whole process should be second nature to you. In an interview, of course, the big difference is what you're selling is you. You are the product. And you know that better than anyone else on the planet. This is the one thing you internalize, know yourself. And yet people sit in front of me and do a very poor selling job for a sales role when they're selling themselves. Now put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. Let me give you what I see when I'm interviewing. Firstly, it's the most important job. Getting the right people into your team is critically important, because if you hire those A players, get the right people in, they're going to make your life as a sales leader far, far easier. But what you are looking for when you're recruiting someone, of course, is de-risking. That is absolutely high on the agenda, subconsciously or consciously. You want to hire someone who ideally has every skill, has done exactly what you want before. That's the perfect, and that's, I'm sure many of you have gone through interviews where someone else has got the perfect experience and that you get the comment, you'd be great, you're capable, it's just this other person has sold this product before or this industry. That's what someone recruiting is looking for, is to you to put the comfort in their mind that you're going to be a safe hire, that I'm not going to be rehiring, having problems with you down the line. And yet when people are being interviewed, they don't seem to have done the homework on that. What are the top three things going in the interviewer is looking for? Do you know? Have you looked at the job spec? Typical job specs will say these are the key criteria, and they'll list everything, right? IT literate, etc. But if you go through it, you can highlight typically what are the obvious, using common sense, what are the top three? Or ask them. Why not ask them that open question? As you would in a sale with a customer, I understand you've given me these requirements for your business. Could you help me understand what the most important 2 or 3 are for this role? They're not going to see that as objectionable, and sharing that with you gives you a much stronger position of where do I now focus in showing my strengths. Anyone I interview, I've always wanted to hire. I don't want to keep doing interviewing process. It's time consuming. It delays you getting the right person on board, starting selling and doing the actual job. So everyone that comes in, I'm hoping, is going to wow me. I want people who are going to come in the door. You're there as an interviewer, not trying to qualify people out, wanting someone, a guy or gal, to walk through the door and wow you and make it easy for you to move them to the next stage. But you expect them to demonstrate sales traits. You're not ticking them off. Did they pre-close? Did they do the opener well, etc. But you're subconsciously, again, you're judging them by how do they come across? How are they going to represent me? And in doing interviewing, as I mentioned there, it's time consuming. It's also draining. If I interview 5 or 6 people in a day, it is tiring, particularly if all the onus is on me to come up with the questions and the interviewee, is passive. And what I'm looking for is what they can do for me. What can they do for my business? What can they do to hit the targets? What are they telling me and showing me that makes me think they're going to be able to do this? The other thing I'm, of course, looking at is, can I work with this person? Can I communicate with them? Are they relaxed? Do I just think I'll get on with them? Because you're going to be with them a lot of time if you employ them. The one thing I wanted to highlight on this one is the second point down, because this one always shocks me. 47% of people have little knowledge of the company when they come to an interview. I'll come back to that in a second. I found tons of stats. This was a good image to use, an infographic, but they're all pretty much saying about half of people coming in don't have good knowledge of the company. So turning up isn't enough. Some of the points I look for. First impressions are critical, and also pre-impressions I'll touch on in 5 seconds. First impressions, everyone knows this statement. You do it with a customer, firm handshake, all the usual stuff, and yet people often turn up late, come in sloppy, etc. Fundamentally, if you're going to be late, at least call, or let me, handle that challenge you're doing. Pre-impressions is the chance to, what can you do before you even get there to give a good impression? Part of that is your social media profiles, I'll touch on in a second. Have you sent them a pre-email? I'll come on to that. Have you looked at their LinkedIn profile? Because I notice if people who I'm about to interview have looked at it a few days before, look at it that morning or the night before you go for the interview, often people will notice you've looked. Behave as you would at a client meeting. If you're going to see a customer, understand in the interview that's how you're being viewed. You're being viewed, this is how you would be. You're going to demonstrate to me in this interview what you'd be like representing me seeing customers. So if you turn up sloppily, you turn up late, you don't have notes written out, you're not prepared, that's how I think you will be with customers. Whether you claim it's not, and this is an interview and it's different, you're not going to get over that, because I'm going to judge you by what you do, not what you say. And questioning to control the path. What I mean here is, it should be an interactive conversation as you would with a customer. But my style, what I think works really well, is get the interviewer talking more. Ask them about the role, ask them questions, get them explaining things, ask them the questions, the old 2 ears, 1 mouth. If they ask the questions and you just answer, you will do most of the talking. It will also not give you thinking time and put you on the spot. You'll just get past one question. I watch interviewees do this. Just get past one question and it's like, and then you ask them another question, they're on edge the whole time because they're on point. Throw questions back, have them prepared. Make it interactive, make it more relaxed for the interviewer. The 5 Ps, proper planning prevents poor performance, an old adage. Prepare, research. It makes it so much easier when you get there. Again, I've been interviewee and interviewer where people have asked, tell me about the company, what do you know about us? And we're not expecting chapter and verse of you can do everything like you work here, but do you know, for example, maybe they've made a recent acquisition or they've just hired a new CFO. It's all on the news pages typically. If you just do a little bit of research with the wondrous internet and a thing called Google that we now have, it's not difficult to find this stuff out. But people don't do it. Now I'm then interpreting, that's how you're going to behave with a customer. You don't go into a customer any longer and say, tell me about your business. You'd start typically with, I understand these things in your business and your industry has these sort of problems. I've looked in your financial report and seen these are some of the objectives you have this year. Could you help elaborate or explain? You give some context of, I'm earning credibility, but I'll ask some questions. Demonstrate during the process that you're going to represent me, our business, to customers well. Show me, because it's much easier for me then to buy into you as a person. Now some of this is teaching to suck eggs, I guess, but it's shocking how many people don't do this. A nice firm handshake, smile, dress appropriately. And why I mean ask is often companies now have a more casual attitude. By default, suited and booted. but there is nothing wrong in approaching the customer if you read about them and it says they have a very relaxed, casual work ethic, of asking, should you come suited and booted? I asked one I went to not so long ago and got the good question. No one else has asked, but absolutely come smart casual. We don't need suited and booted. It doesn't fit our culture. Arrive early. These things should be taken as granted, right? But people don't. Ask if they got parking. Another catch that people get, oh, I got here early, but I couldn't park, so sorry I'm late. Pre-qualify. Ask questions beforehand. Reach out beforehand. Is there anything you'd like me to prepare for coming along? You know, there's nothing wrong with behaving like you would with a customer. It's not a rigid process. Be knowledgeable about them. Do your research. Read up, as I've mentioned. Your product is you. You know, read your CV again. Read back. Look at recent deals. Think about them. You're going to get asked. Think about your unique selling points, but for this role, they're not the same in every individual instance. Look at the spec and prepare for likely questions. You know, for example, look at the profile of the person. Often people will put on there, this is my key edicts in life, or this is what I'm really passionate about. Are they passionate about children's charities? Things like, know about the person or people you're going to be interviewed with. Again, I've interviewed people where there's been 2 or 3 of us interviewing them, and I've asked them during the process, what do you know about me and Sue and Bob? Just curious if you researched us, and you get a blank face. Or you get, well, I know you used to work at such and such, and I think you've been in the industry about 25 years. You've been at this company, you've only been here a short period, and you've been here about 10 years. It doesn't you're not memorizing everything about them, but just to be able to illustrate to them, you've taken notice as you would with a customer. And think about asking smart questions. I'm always impressed by the questions people ask, not the typical out of a textbook question, but things that make me think they've thought about this. And you get a lot of those by preparing. Look at the website, particularly their news, press releases part, search Google, look at social media. Look at their social media account. Now, there's a whole balance here where some people use it massively and others don't. But look at it, what sort of things are they posting? There might be something on there where they've posted something particularly interesting, or they're promoting a webinar or something. Go and register for it. Sometimes I've registered for a demo or a free trial of their product, and they've mentioned in the interview, oh yeah, it popped up, we saw that you'd done that. Look at Glassdoor, for example. Look at some of the company reps that they've got, and etc., and company reports. Look up their annual report online, because in there you're going to find them talking about what their objectives for the year ahead are, what their challenges are. You know, can you illustrate how you might help them resolve some of those? And then I've put some questions here that I think are smart. There's loads of these, but think about them. You know, ask them, what attracted you? Maybe they've only been there 6 months or 9 months. What attracted you to join this company from XYZ, which is a lot, ABC, which is a lot bigger? What do you like about working here? What are the top priorities for this position? Most challenging aspects of the role? What's the team I'd work with like? Can you give me some feeling of what the atmosphere is like? Aside from the obvious sales numbers, what else defines success for this role for the business? What daily habits would someone successful in this role have? You know, interspersing other specific questions you may have with good, intelligent questions, making it conversational, really differentiates it and helps the interviewer see you as someone different, someone who's given it thought. Make the question specific if you can to something you've read about them. You don't say, well, I read this about you. The question will illustrate that. Some tips. Where possible, get your own interviews from top-level approaches. So what I said, I've spoken to a few people recently who I know are interviewing, is what they're doing is going to a recruiters, which recruiters have their place and will add value and help you, but that's all they're doing. Why not reach out to companies you'd like to work for? Why not look up the type of business you're in, the type of companies that might be them, or the competitors, and look them up on LinkedIn, because what you'll often find is you look at one, you'll be able to find who the people are, who's the person that would make a decision on this role. Is it someone in this country? Is it someone abroad because you want a role that's first in the market or something? Look them up, reach out to them on LinkedIn using an email. Work out their email address. Look at them on social media. You know, I've done that many times. Sometimes you don't get a response, but often with a very carefully constructed response, you get one. You've not gone through a recruiter, you've differentiated yourself, you've reached to the right, you've shown tenacity in selling, you've shown I sell at top level. I try and go and get a conversation at top level and illustrate my value I can bring to that customer, that business. I mentioned your online social profile earlier. Tidy it up. Make sure it's consistent. If you've got a Twitter account, you've got make sure the picture is professional. They're going to look at your LinkedIn first, but typically they're going to look at your Twitter account. They're going to search your name in Google. They'll find your Facebook, particularly if recruiters are involved or internal recruiters, because they're de-risking the step for the person who's doing the actual interviews. You know, they're the first gatekeeper. They're going to look at you and think, well, I don't want to put you forward to a senior director or manager internally if they're just going to find this profile and discount you anyway. So maybe look at having the same picture on each, just something professional, not something geeky where you're drunk in the pub. Now, your choice to disagree with this, but I can tell you, I've done it. I look at things, rightly or wrongly, it gives a first impression and gut feel. When you go to the interview, and I'm sure some of you will cringe at this, take a notepad. I've interviewed a lot of salespeople who come in and sit there with no pad, nothing printed off, no prep, and it's all in their head. And it just shocks me, and it doesn't make me feel that's what I'd like them to do in front of a customer for me. Yes, they could fix it later and be coached, but I'm looking for someone who's got the nous that that's a basic. And make sure you've got a pen and a spare pen, of course. Prepare a list of questions and write them out or print them out. Have them with you. Don't try and memorize them. By all means, cross them off as you're going through or things have already been covered. Bring your CV. Look at the person and the employer. Maybe print their link. I often go with a LinkedIn profile printed out. Someone sits there with my LinkedIn profile, I think, okay, that's quite flattering, and okay, at least I've done the homework. Now, whether they've read it or not, but it gives an impression. You know, maybe a print. I typically print a print out, even though you got sat nav, of the map of the last part of the area. What if your sat nav fails, or you have to get out the car, or you can't park nearby, etc., etc. Here's a simple tip. Send a pre-email or LinkedIn message. Even if you're going through a recruiter, send a message. You're going to meet Bob and Sue. Why not send them a message beforehand? I'm looking forward to meeting you on Friday at 10 a.m. If there's anything you feel I should prepare in advance, I'd love to hear from it. If not, I'll see you on the morning. Kind regards. Something simple, short, just saying, hey, I'm a little bit different to the other people you're going to see. If they see 10 people and you're the only one that's done that, it's just given that little edge, that little thought. And then why not send them on following it? Thanks for your time meeting. I really enjoyed the interview. Here's a follow-up answer to something I promised to get you, etc., etc. The sort of thing you do with customers, right? Research the people I've already mentioned, not just because to know a little bit about them, but who do they know that you know? What if there's someone you know? And I often like to drop into the message, if I see they've got a recommendation from Bob that I used to work with, why not drop it in during the process at an appropriate time? Oh, and by the way, I'm sure if you wanted to reach out to Bob Smith, I noted he'd written a reference in your profile. I used to work with Bob at XYZ. He'd be a great reference for me. Shows you've paid attention, shows you've researched, you've spotted something maybe no one else has spotted, you're connected, etc., etc. Think about, and I said this right at the beginning, put yourself in the interviewer's shoes. Interviewing is a hard job. It's an important job, and you want to have someone come through the door that makes you feel, I could employ these, I could work with them. Make it interactive. Take some of the pressure off them. Make them just enjoy the interview. I have interviews where I'm, oh, when's this going to finish? And others which just fly by and you want to spend more time with the person and it just feels relaxed and it just feels like your old buddies already, just because you get on and they've made it interactive, as you want to do with a customer. And get feedback. At the end of the interview, ask for feedback. Bad is valuable. You know, you don't want it to be bad, but if someone's picked something up of, I really didn't like the way that or this gave me this impression, find out, because it's invariably going to affect you again. And if you don't find out, what if you do 5 interviews and the same thing's scupping you every time? What if you found out at the first interview? You could have adjusted and done something about it. Closing the interview, think about being natural. It should be a natural close, right? I want people who feel this has been professional, they're calm, they're prepared, they're collected. But at the end, I'm shocked by the number of salespeople who, even when they've done everything up to that's been great, I'm thinking, go on, try and close me. You're not going to get the job handed on a plate right now, but at least show the process. You know, and there's different ways to asking for that, and there's some examples I've used here. Come up with your own that you're comfortable and relaxed with. But do you have any reservations about my suitability for this role, having gone through our discussion? Or, you know, may I ask one more question? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor, 10 being the perfect candidate for you, could you give me some idea of how you'd rate me for the role? Where do you think I'm at? And they say, for example, well, I'd probably think a 7. Great, I appreciate that, thank you. Could you help me understand what could I have done to move from a 7 to an 8 or a 9 or a 10? What other things would you have liked to have heard or understood? It gets you back into conversation of handling that objection and measuring what that is. Is there anything that would prevent you taking me forward to the next stage? Nice, simple ways to demonstrate how you would behave with a customer. That's run at about the 20-minute mark. James, I don't know if you've got questions you can help feed to me.
Hi, thank you very much for that, Ian. I hope everyone's taken something away from that. We have had a few questions come through. Firstly, you mentioned firmly that I can expect my social presence to be searched. What can I do to increase my online reputation or brand? Do you have any advice for this?
Sure, so that's a good question. And it's a progressive one. You can. I've written an article recently. By me to have a look on my LinkedIn. I think the guys are going to maybe send it out. I'll give them the link to send out on a follow-up for this around social and personal brand. People will hear that and think, well, this is complex and rocket science. It's not. You know, people are going to look you up. 1, have a good, as I mentioned, a good clear photograph. 2, have good references, or look at it yourself, or have a friend look at it, or a sales coach if you've used one in your business. Have someone else look at it and say, what do you think? Is there anything that stands out? And often I've had people, helped other people with this and looked at it and said, yeah, didn't you do such and such? Yeah, it's not mentioned. Tell me some of the biggest things you've done that you're really proud of. Okay, that's not mentioned. Or I won this award. Where's that? You know, often you overlook these things because you're too close to it. If you are tweeting or you do any blogs or any articles, and you don't have to write hundreds, or you've got something where you can write a good bit of content, put it on there. It adds to your personal equity online. But it is a slow thing. But understand they're going to look and find you. So just search your own name in Google's an easy one. See what comes up. Look at the first 2 or 3 pages. No one's going to look at page 25, so don't worry about that. No one's got the time. But the first 2 or 3, what's on there about you, if anything? So just think about what they're going to find. They're going to look you up, look at it with a independent view, and think, what could I do to improve this, to make it simple? Here's an easy one, and I'll leave you with this one, an answer to this question. Make sure your CV that you're sending to them matches the dates on your LinkedIn profile. Because I've seen many where there's a total discrepancy. You ask them that in the interview, the candidate starts skipping all over the place. Because one of them's wrong. Is there a reason they've done that? And so it's little things. Don't put yourself on the spot.
Fantastic. Just had another one come through. What do you think interviewers are looking for in Facebook? Is it a social life or is it a business life?
Well, I don't think they're not looking. When I look at it, I'm not looking for anything specific, right? I understand it's Facebook, it may be personal, but if you do look, you're just having a quick glance. You're not going to go down every feed and research everything and who they're connected to. That's where people are going to look on LinkedIn because it's designed for and more business. But they're going to have a quick glance. So I've seen business people on Facebook where they've got it open. Remember, you can make it private to only your friends. And in their feed, there is quite offensive material. Okay, now, within your peer group or out for a beer, you might tell a rude joke or you might say, but I don't want to see offensive language in there. Now, I may be laid back and think, whatever, but not everyone is. And also you're thinking, well, that's someone public, the customer could look at that. So worst case, if you have got that stuff, I'm not saying you can't do it, Why not make it private to your friends? Just think about what someone's going to look at, what their impression will. You can argue, well, they shouldn't. They shouldn't look. They shouldn't make a decision on me on that. It's not fair. Regardless of that, they are. So you're welcome to your opinion, but I tell you now, people do. I've seen it. I've been on the other side. I've had other people say, have you seen this candidate's Facebook profile? Look at that. And it immediately, you can't take back an opinion someone's got, right? It's like in court where people, the lawyer will say, or the judge will say, ignore that comment. It's all very well, but it's all in my brain. Just think about it.
Fantastic. Next question is, how would you deal with someone that's changed jobs regularly, so every 2 years or such like?
So, yeah, that's a good one. I'll be frank, when I look at CVs, if I get a CV through, that's one of the first things I look at on LinkedIn or their CV. I just write down the side, and I know a lot of people do this. Skim down the side and go 8 months, 7 months, 9 months, 12 months, and look for the 6 jobs in 6 years, average a year, I'm going to have them a year. It's the candidate. If they've got a blip, there's a 5-year period, there's a 4-year, there's a 6-month, there's a 3-year, do you know what? That's life. Redundancy, that's like the real world. It happens. That's not. But where it's consistent, that I'm not being, different to many people that I know do the interviewing process and sales leadership, I'm not going to see them. If you've got a blip, tell them. If you were made redundant or you had a personal issue in your life, there's nothing wrong. I don't mind someone saying to me, I had a couple of bad luck rolls. Look at my career, however, I would make sure in my introductory letter that I put across, I would interpret, is someone going to look at this and think, uh-oh, I need to handle it then, or I'm not going to get the interview. Particularly if you find you're not getting interviews and you look at your own CV profile and have got a couple of short roles, is there a legitimate reason? Explain it in your introductory letter. Unfortunately, a family member was ill at this time and it made it very difficult, therefore, get it, we're all real, we've all got real lives. I've had people explain things where there's been a genuine piece, great, I can overlook that and therefore ask questions and try and look at them as a person. But if not, people make judgments. Again, whether you like it or not, people make quick judgments because they have to, because there's a lot of candidates and you're looking to eliminate, in the early stages, you're looking to eliminate out, not in.
Fantastic, thank you. Is not being on LinkedIn or Facebook or other social media a negative? Would you see it as a negative, or is that a...
I think it is. Certainly in industries it won't be, so I'm not going to say in all industries. Certain industries, there are, if you find all your peers and other people in your industry just don't use LinkedIn. If you're in the technology sector, as I am, and I interview a candidate, look for a candidate, and they're not even on LinkedIn, I'm shocked, because that means they can't look at customer profiles. How can they do their research? Do they even understand this whole world of social selling? And social selling is a tool within your kit bag. It doesn't replace selling and the fundamental sales skills. But if you're ignoring it, you're not showing me that you're one of those salespeople who are probably going to be in the top 20% to give me 80% of my results. If you're in an industry where no one uses it, or 9 out of 10 people aren't on there, and those that have a very poor profile, it's not going to have as much context. So I'm not going to give you a swathing statement that says you've all got to be on it, because I am. But if everyone out, you find other people and candidates you're up against, and you look up the people you're about to interview on there, and they've got strong profiles, etc., so you're going to get a negative view again potentially. Twitter less so, LinkedIn primarily. If you're not, that's the way, that's becoming your online CV, your online career profile, and customers are going to look at you on there.
Fantastic.
So,
okay. I think this is $1 million question really, and one that's always been discussed quite prominently. But how long should your CV be? 1, 2, 3 pages, or?
yeah, I've been guilty of this one myself. So let's stick my hand up for this one. Of what people tend to do, and I've done the same, is edit your CV over the years. So you started with a CV when you were younger, and then add to it, and edit it a bit, and add to it, because who wants to start from a blank page? It needs to be shorter because what you remember, you want to get through the whole job, like in sales, is to get through the shortlisting process, to get through to that last 5 or 6 people where you're in front of someone. That is your objective, to get into the inner circle of the shortlist. Your CV is what's going to get you there, and your introductory letter. So you've got to think, how's this going to be viewed? Try and put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter and interviewer who's got 50 or 100 of those things coming through. Often they also get passed, by the way, by automatic engines. When you're doing this and you upload your CV onto a portal, often what they're doing, the portal is stripping it out, and that portal is looking for things like, some of these applications will look things like short periods, and automatically in 300 people that apply, narrow it down to 40 for someone to actually humanly look at. So it's hard, right, at the top of the funnel. But yeah, I would make it shorter, succinct. If you've got good references, I tend to put a few example references that are pertinent in there for the type of role I'm going for. That's why I push to get people to give me references on LinkedIn. Because if they give you a nice reference on LinkedIn, it's a public domain site where it's a previous customer said you did a fantastic job, or a previous employer, you can cut and paste that and use it in an introductory letter or your CV. Because it's on a public domain website, you're open to use it and reuse it.
Fantastic. I think the CV thing, how keeping that short, is an incredibly important one. So there's a fantastic question on there. Just next, how much weight, while you're talking about what's on your CV, how much weight do you put on academic qualifications compared to experience?
So yeah, someone said to me recently, what people tend to look at when they're employing someone is lag indicators. What have they done before? Not looking forward, what can they do for me? What are they capable of doing when I discuss it with them? How are they approaching things? It's what have they done before? Does it matter if they were good 10 years ago? Doesn't mean they're good now. Same as a footballer. Think of sport. I'm not a particular sportsman, but think of sport. Someone may have been fantastic in their prime, but are they as good now? People change. So I think the educational piece for me is relevant where they're new. It's someone junior, new into their career, and they haven't got a wealth of experience. If someone's been working for the last 15 years, do I look back and personally, do I care if they had a degree or whatever? No, because they've demonstrated by what they've done. And I want to, so that's what's going to get them to the interview. Then I'm interested in how do they behave? What traits do they show in the interview? Not what have they done before. That's great. Doesn't mean they're going to do it again. They may have had a lucky break, might be in the right place, right time. Their life circumstance may have changed. They're not as motivated anymore. They may live further, etc., etc. What I'm looking for is the CV is what gets them to the interview, gets them into the shortlist. At the interview, I'm looking for not lag criteria, but what are they going to do for me now? How do they demonstrate themselves? How do they show they're a salesperson now?
Lovely, thank you. Does a handwritten introductory letter still have a place when sending in your CV?
That's an interesting one. I think that will vary depending on person and industry. I cannot think of the last time I got a handwritten letter. So would it stand out? Yeah. Typically, however, I don't get stuff posted through. I don't know about other people that are listing. It may be different in other industries, so I'm not going to, but certainly in the IT sector, everything is electronic that I've seen for years. I can't think of a time I've had a CV, no, I'm just pausing for a second to think, where it's been posted in. So that might be a differential. I'm always looking for, how do I differentiate myself in the process when I'm an interviewee to every other candidate that's gone through? Do I reach out to someone senior and say, I've just applied for this role, I'm really excited, I read this about your company, I think I could bring great value, and I note in your annual report these 3 things are the most critical for you in the coming year. I helped a previous company really overcome that, and here's the evidence. That's the perfect thing, right? Where you're not going to have that every time, but so if you think it's going to give you a different edge in the sector you're in or the type of business you're applying for, why not? Make sure your handwriting's readable, though, right? There's a certain thing comes with that.
Lovely thing. And one last question to finish off the webinar. I guess if you're sat in an interview situation and either you or a candidate doesn't feel it's right, or something's cropped up and either you as an interviewer feel the candidate hasn't prepared, it's not suitable for the role, or you're sat there as a candidate and you think, you know, I've looked into it, I don't like the questions I'm being asked, I'm not sure that I'm going to be a fit here. Is it okay to end it early, say, and to put a line underneath and say, look, I thank you for the opportunity, but I don't think this is going to work for me or you?
I think yes. I think it's a brave person that does it sometimes. So I've been in interviewing someone before where I think you often get a gut, where it's a no, you often get a gut in the first couple of minutes sometimes, because if someone absolutely train wrecks early on, they're flustered, they get your name wrong, they're not prepared, they haven't got a pad, you know, they've got cross, you're thinking there's no way I'm going to employ this person. Do you just cut it there and you know, so I always, as an interviewer, have some feeling for the individual, because what I don't want to do is knock them, have them going out feeling absolutely demotivated and bad. So I personally, from my side of the table, I would typically take them through a little bit more, and if I think it's worth an exit, is break it at an appropriate point, so it doesn't feel bad to them, and then just say, look, let me help you understand why. But what I will always do, and I would advise candidates to try and ask, as I said on the slides, is give them feedback. And I've had candidates sit there and go, do you know what? And I say to them, you may not agree with the feedback, but I'm going to give you it, because often what happens is they then get it through a recruiter and they go, well, I don't understand why they said that, and they never get the conversation again. So I encourage people, particularly when you're interviewing someone, to share with them, do you know what, I want to give you some honest feedback. I was very disappointed you didn't have a pad. That gives me the impression, oh, well, I always have one, it's in my bag here. Okay, that's great, but let me tell you how it feels for me. It looks like you're not prepared. Oh, and I've had people, and I always counter it with, it's my opinion. So you're absolutely fair, you don't know me, to leave this interview and say, you know, you think I have no idea what I'm talking about. That is your prerogative, but I'm just going to give you the... And I've had people typically say, do you know what, no one's ever told me that. That's really valuable. Because for the next interview, if they then do it, it's their choice. But if no one ever tells you, how can you get better? So I encourage candidates, because interviewers tend not to do that. They tend to then give the feedback to the recruiter, if there's a recruiter involved, and you get it diluted. Ask them, you know, will you be taking me forward? Could you help me understand? Do you think you'll take me forward? No, I don't think I would. Okay. Would you mind sharing with me, I won't take offence, the reasons so that I can learn from it? Because I will be interviewing with other companies, and I don't want to make the same mistakes if I can improve myself. Put it in a way that takes the pressure off the interviewer and says, just give me it so I can learn from it. That's valuable. If you've come to an interview, you've done the effort, if you've done preparation, you've made the effort anyway, why not take something positive away from it, ready and improve yourself?